My name is John Tsagronis. I am a professor of statecraft and national security affairs at the Institute of World Politics. I am not John Lanchowski. He's much taller and wiser. But unfortunately, he's unable to be with us today. So he's asked that I, at the 11th hour, substitute some comments on his behalf. But first, I do want to welcome you all to this inaugural event. It's a very important event for the Institute of World Politics. It's been in the works for almost 5 years, if you think about the time when the idea was conceived and the evolution. So you're seeing the birth of a product that had 5 years of gestation. There are two people I'd like to call out initially. They are really the engine behind this effort. First, I'd like to introduce to you, or mention to you, Mr. Jeff Hancock. Jeff is a co-founder of the Cyber Intelligence Initiative. He is a 25-year-plus expert in cybersecurity, former military officer, an academic, a practitioner, like we like to say at IWP, scholar practitioner, and instrumental in developing this initiative from the ground up. He's truly a tactician, operator who can see the big picture, but without his insight, his experience, I don't think this initiative would have really taken off. So I'd like to shout out the great works of Jeff Hancock. Jeff, if you just stand up for a moment. You will see a lot of Jeff today and in the future as this initiative takes root. The other person I'd like to introduce to you is someone you may already know, and she truly is the essence of this idea. She was a former executive at British Telecom who for many years was conducting international business around the world as an American in a British company with other foreign dignitaries across the table, and thought, where are the U.S. national security interests in this negotiation? Clearly they're not residing with our friends the Brits or the Ukrainians or the Russians or the Poles. So she pondered that relationship and decided that rather than go to business school and learn business skills that she's already developed over her years of working in the corporate world, she wanted to go and learn national security affairs. And among many options, she very wisely chose the Institute of World Politics. She graduated from the Institute in statecraft and national security affairs. But throughout her tenure there, she wanted to develop a program that bridged the private sector's interests and the public sector's interest in national security affairs, and the epicenter of that was in the cyber domain. And for her energy, for her vision, for her ability to develop a team, and it's not been easy, I want to especially call out the works of Michelle Watson. Michelle, if you would stand. They are truly a great team, and we have many others, C.W. Walker, Maria Hayden. There are a number of people who've done some tremendous work for us over the last couple of years, culminating in today's event. As I said, JL was to have been here to welcome you all initially and had his remarks prepared. If you know JL, they are pretty extensive remarks. I won't be so lengthy in my comments, but I'd just like to tell you a couple of things to set the stage. Many of us have recognized that the cyber domain is what is often called the fifth geographic domain after land, sea, air, and space. And there's a long history, there are long traditions, there are institutions, there are cultures that enable us to operate in those domains. Cyber is very, very different, and I think it challenges us all in many different ways, but particularly because cyber is a constantly evolving, developing, maturing domain. We never have a static appreciation of what the impact is of that domain. And it also challenges us by the sense of time, distance, scope, and volume. And as I tell my class, my students, when I teach at IWP in a cyber statecraft class, think about this. Years ago, if you were a foreign intelligence officer, you would, in the thick of night in your fedora and your trench coat, try to sneak into a building with your little Minox camera and quietly open up that safe and take pictures very quickly of the file that you've targeted, and then sneak out and hope to come back another day and take more pictures of those photos. Well, cyber completely explodes that ability to operate, or that need to operate in that manner. You can be thousands of miles away. You don't have to break into a building physically. In time, you can withdraw voluminous amounts of information in nanoseconds, not days. So if you wanted to be an individual to absorb a lot of material, you could sit in Beijing or Moscow or Buenos Aires, or pick a place on this earth and maneuver your way in to the data that you need, and very quickly, in great quantities, extract that information. That challenges us today. It challenges us in how we conduct our business, how we conduct security, and what it is that we need to protect. Many of you are far more astute technically than I am in cyber, or the cyber domain. And we, Michelle and Jeff and I and others, have observed that many programs that play to the cyber world have a very technical focus. And that's very important. It's very important to appreciate network operations and good software packages and how to develop a good firewall and how to develop better passwords, what we call practicing safe cyber. But there's something more at stake, I think, that's needed in our communities, and that is a cyber intelligence professional who appreciates the traditional tradecraft skills of the intelligence professional. How do you protect information? How do you conduct a good threat assessment? How can you identify your risks and your vulnerabilities? How do you provide counterintelligence in the cyber domain? And if you only read the papers, let alone search the web, there are daily assaults, whether they're attacks or espionage on businesses or government institutions, taking advantage of the efficiencies of the cyber domain, the networks, the interconnectivity that we all enjoy, and these are tremendous benefits to society and our way of life. But the adversaries take advantage of that and have found ways to disrupt our behavior, to disrupt our profitability in companies, to disrupt the information that we find of great value. Many of you in this room have probably received the letters from OPM, as did I, informing us that our very personal information has been exposed. And many individuals would look at that and do a hot wash or a debrief or an assessment of what exactly happened. How did the culprits get into that database technically? But the more important question is, why did they get that information? What can they do with that information now that they have it? And that requires a different intellectual orientation, I believe. And that is the essence of the Cyber Intelligence Initiative, to develop a next generation of leaders in government and industry who specialize or want to become more aware of the intelligence aspects of the cyber domain. And we will, throughout the day, introduce you to a number of different certifications that we are proposing, courses that we will be teaching at the Institute, relationships that we're developing as this initiative takes root. And I am very happy to see all of you here today to enjoy that inaugural launch. Why IWP? And this is probably the reason JL has made such extensive comments in the past, because he's so passionate of the school. IWP is arguably one of the leading graduate institutions in higher education of statecraft and intelligence. We pride ourselves, I as a faculty member, as having faculty members who are scholar practitioners. Every individual who teaches at IWP is not only intellectually curious and has academic credentials behind them, but they are also practitioners. They have been at the National Security Council. They've been in the intelligence community. They've been ambassadors. They've been military officers. And I think this lends a significant value to a program widely at the Institute, but certainly to cyber intelligence initiative that we're developing. And you will see throughout the day individuals who are truly scholar practitioners, if not in the cyber world specifically, certainly in the intelligence national security space, who can lend their years of expertise to develop a next generation of professionals in this new domain. I really don't want to steal anyone else's thunder because we're going to have breakout sessions this afternoon, but let me just walk through with you briefly the agenda that I hope you all have at your table. Where we'll have some comments from our founders, Michelle and Jeff, in a moment. And then we will have a very interesting, I'll call it private sector perspective, from an alum of IWP, who also happens to have had several years of significant experience in the Defense Department on cybersecurity issues, and is now the Chief Information Security Officer for Sony, who happened to be there at the time when the North Koreans were penetrating Sony Entertainment because of the threatened release of a terrible movie called The Interview. I would suspect, though, that John Simone won't be able to talk in detail, if at all, about the ongoing litigation that's ensued because of that attack, but he certainly has tremendous expertise, both academically, as a public official, and now as a private individual responsible for cybersecurity at a pretty important entertainment company. We will break for lunch, and a friend of mine, Peter Singer, will provide a keynote address. Peter, as many of you may know, is I wouldn't even say he's up and coming, he's here. He's an existing strategist, young generation strategist. He's now at New America Foundation. His latest book is Ghost Fleet, which examines the cyber components of potential future conflict. It's going to be worked into a movie, I understand. Peter's working on a second edition of the book, wanting to tease out the shortcomings that he thinks are in the first edition. So I'm sure he'll take your comments under advisement later. You've probably seen him on television. You will certainly see him in the future on television. He's quite a character. Then we'll break out into our respective groups. This will be, I believe, ballroom or room 1 or A. And then just across the hall past the registration desk is ballroom B, where it's a little bit smaller, and we will break out to describe with faculty and subject matter experts the various certificates, the 7 certificates that we are going to launch today. A little bit about the curriculum, about the personalities, about the scheduling, and so forth. So we expect you'll be moving from one room to the other depending upon your interests in the certificates or the speakers or the subject matter. And then we are extremely fortunate to have General Michael Hayden, who needs very little introduction, but for those of you who may not know, a former director of CIA and director of NSA, who is a long-standing friend of the school, who shall I say, has provided some counsel to us in the development of the CII and will provide a keynote address later on this afternoon at 3 o'clock. So we'll be very happy to have him here. By the way, both Peter and General Hayden's books are for sale in the front. If you've brought a copy with you already, they'll be happy to sign them. And at 4 o'clock, after General Hayden's comments, we'll have a little networking session, very informal, where you can meet everyone here and talk a little bit more about your future aspirations in the CII. Also, I hope he is embarrassed by this, but a little shout out to my chancellor at the Institute of World Politics and former director of CIA, Mr. Jim Woolsey. Jim, I saw him earlier. I don't see him sitting there now. Is he still there? Where he moved. There he is. And his lovely wife Nancy are in the back. They will be available to talk to you as well if you have any questions for them. So without further ado, I'd like to to hand over the podium to Jeff and Michelle, who will give us a little bit more detail and structure to the CII, and we'll begin our day. Thank you very much, Michelle and Jeff.